watching this also who tune into it here and there, students of mine. I don't know how many.
On Sundays, we usually get 7 to 9.
So this morning, the topic, sometimes I don't even have a topic, but the topic that arose is something that's very simple and it's part of the Buddhist teachings, and it's part of the teachings of Advaita, which is a Hindu philosophy, psychology called not to. So the idea with that, something like that, a title like that, is to encourage us, to help us find other reference points than just right and wrong, or I like it, I don't like it, which are the worldly dharmas or worldly truths. Most people are following those. Most people are looking for what's right, what's wrong, what's pleasurable, what's not pleasurable. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with that. I mean, it's a good idea not to do something that's painful. So we're not saying that. It's just that people get on the kind of the consensus reality, it is sometimes called, where we all agree that making a lot of money is a good thing. We all agree that being famous or well-known or having a good reputation is very good. And sometimes we shoot for that, or we shoot for some kind of, as is said, worldly success. Not incorrect. We're not saying that we shouldn't have some of that going on. What happens is sometimes we go overboard with that, and we put a lot of emphasis on that. And so in this as a spiritual path, we're saying that the ultimate situation, expressed in a relative way. So the ultimate situation expressed in a relative way is not to. So everything you think that is polarized, everything you think that is, when I say you, I'm not accusing you of anything, but generally speaking, people think that something that is good has no downside, or something that is totally a downside has no good. This is what happens. This is why wars happen. Not only the war wherever the place, in Syria, Afghanistan, not only those wars, but also the war in your own heart center, this struggle, this darkness that comes together like this that we have no reason for. And there's a possibility you haven't had that experience, but some people do. And so when we say not to, this gives us kind of a reference point as you're living your life and as you're functioning, going to work, hanging out with your friends, your family, and so on, is to actually, I like to say it's like a Control-Alt-Delete. We all know what that is. Anybody not know? That's how I usually tell if somebody's from another planet. You say, yeah, I don't know what that is. Alien. So the idea is to have something that you can refer to that's very simple, has nothing to do with some kind of religious philosophy or belief in anything. Buddhism is, though it really looks like a belief system, actually is not. It's there are beliefs in Buddhism, but the main backbone, the very core of the Buddha's Dharma or the Buddha's truth is something that he discovered that is fundamentally true, capital F, fundamental. And that is, everything is dependently arisen. Nothing comes from its own side as a solid, separate being without any connection with anything else. This includes your identity. The simple form, as I often say, is obvious one, is your mom and dad. Without them, no you. Might be someone here, but it's not going to be you. So when we say, when we reflect on that, not to, when we see our mind continually separating into this and that, into success and failure, it's like the constant fork in the road that most people's, when I say most, I don't know, maybe not most, but a lot of people's lives is made up of one fork in the road after another. They look like correct and incorrect choices. Look closer. Look closer. Bring the awareness. And if you find that you're lacking some awareness, then spend some time doing what? sit on a cushion, look at the wall, or just flat out bore the daylights out of yourself, which it may do for a while. Eventually, it gets kind of interesting, though, when you see, that's interesting. Actually, when boredom becomes interesting, we're starting to make some progress now. When the very thing you've been trying to avoid has some kind of quality to it that your insight, your intelligence is magnetized by that, so that rather than just avoid or shut down or, you know, whatever, turn on the television, go on lots of ski trips, do drugs. And I'm not saying that those are, that there's something wrong with ski trips. I'm just saying when we go overboard and try to use some kind of entertainment thing in our life, and you've got, you know, your morning, you've got maybe whatever length of time, 40, 50, 60 years, maybe 70, maybe 80. You might have a lot of time here. It's kind of a relative thing, as they say. But to spend a lot of that time just not really seeing how really, really valuable being a human being is. I often say, I'm saying now, look back and see when you decided to be a human being. You may have a memory of that, but you'd be very rare, because most people don't know how this happened. But we're born, we're given a name, we're educated, hopefully. We're told this, told that. We're either put down, which makes us find other ways of being successful or feeling good, or else we're fluffed up a lot so that we get too much fluff. We're too encouraged and too not really allowed to learn a little bit, learn something from falling, tripping over our own shoelaces. So when I say, when it is said, not to find any polarity in your life, find any fork in the road, and you'll see that actually it's not two different things. The mind, the ego mind, the self-centered mind, the narcissistic mind, the mind that is very self-centered and I just want stuff for myself. Not wrong. It's not like incorrect. You shouldn't do that. But when we do that, we tend to leave out a whole lot of things, namely the rest of the world. So the idea is to see the way the polarity is happening and look at it closely and see the way in which you separate it. See how much fuel, something that's already separated conceptually, see if you're fueling that. You're trying to start some kind of war in your own heart mind, trying to add to it. And what's the payoff for that? What does ego get out of struggling and fighting? What do we get out of struggling? What's the payoff there? We're okay. We're going to the store. We're going to get some groceries. We've got a list, and yet something is in the back of our mind. Something is separating us out. We're not just there with our grocery list. Another way of saying that is we're not happy. That grocery list, that reference point, that store you're going to is fundamentally the relative situation is completely there, completely clear. But we add worries and thoughts about the future, regrets about the past. We keep mixing it up. Very difficult for us to be in what is commonly referred to as now. Not right now. You can't actually be in the now because the now is something that's always the case. So you can't actually kind of reverse and get back into the now. Take a look at that. And when you do, think of the little slogan or the little reference point of not to, which of course sees the way, acknowledges or sees the way we divide things. And then the teaching there is, it's not that. It is actually not to, which does not mean one. Not to does not mean one. If you think it does, you'll suffer. And the reason you'll suffer is because you keep looking for oneness. You can't look for oneness, because if you look for oneness, then there's you, and there's the search for oneness. We're back to two again. See that? And actually, I think the thing that triggers this, the thing that makes it difficult, is we have an expectation or a preconception that if we're, to use the fancy words, in the now, not running around in circles about or worrying, that we're just here, just present, that somehow it'll be beautiful, wonderful. Maybe not. Maybe that you have to do that first before you actually start acknowledging and being responsible for your karma. Responsibility does not mean blame. It means the ability to respond in a genuine way. Which means don't cover it up. With your thoughts and your ideas and your justifications, and don't block it out or get rid of it with your aggression, your anger, your warfare. And the hardest one to see is don't distract yourself with a mouse or look to some other thing. That's kind of the sneakiest way to get out of responsibility. Really, there's something else going on. I really need to move to Philadelphia, start a chinchilla ranch. It's not that funny, Lisa. She's probably thought of starting a chinchilla ranch.
Cute.
So yes,
What does ego get out of warfare?
It feels like it's real. We don't want to, the self-centeredness that got started at some point, the coming together and the belief in the I'm here and everything else is either against me or for me, some kind of polarity. What it gets out of that warfare is winning. I can win this, I can do this, I can accomplish this. It's one of the 8 worldly dharmas of success. Not wrong, it's just highly polarized. And in the same way, or in a similar way, or in an echo of that, you can't have success without failure. They get their meaning from each other. Kind of goes unnoticed, though. I'm not saying it goes unnoticed from the point of view of not being obvious that there's success and failure, but to think that they're 2 separate things. Not 2. They're not 2. Fine, pick out one. Pick out any one that you commonly think of in your mind and look at those and examine those and use the practice of meditation. Sit down, hold still, sharpen the mind so that when you go into the world of two-ness, where is two-ness? Indonesia? You know?
No, I have no idea.
It's never happened.
Oh, what is your name?
Warren.
Warren, what's your question, Warren?
Can you struggle and emerge?
I'm not saying that's impossible, but it depends on how the struggle is handled. If the struggle is about a particular path, I'd say in a mundane way or everyday struggle, I think you can actually you can squeeze some results out of samsara or out of this world of cause and effect. You can squeeze some out. They don't last. Impermanence, you will die, which is the biggest shock. Oh my gosh, you mean I'm not going to live forever? No, you're not. Whatever you think you are is going down. But what you actually are, nothing can happen to it. But if you don't realize that, then you'll operate out of open fear from attachment to that which dies. Attachment to this. You think you're this, going down. So struggling, it depends on the level of struggle. It depends on the insight around the struggle. We're not saying there isn't some struggle, but the kind of struggle that we're talking about is about awareness. So the way it would be said here is to bring energy into that, put energy into it. You're in the kitchen, you're making some coffee or tea or whatever, and you're should I jog or should I sit on the cushion and look at the wall? I think I'll jog. That's a struggle. I mean, not much of one, but there's a little bit of tension there. And I'm not saying a right or wrong. I'm saying really look at it. There's some kind of tension going on, and it seems to get more rarefied and more refined, so that even a teaching person can't really do it for you. All he or she can do is refer you back to your own mind. And the degree to which you give them permission to do that is the degree to which you will get helped. But if you don't want any help, you want to do it yourself, then I'm not saying that won't work. It depends on your karma, how you came into this world, how you came into the last 15 or 20 worlds. And I don't believe in reincarnation, so nor do I disbelieve in it. That's there's no position. You don't have to take a position on something that's is probably the case. Like I believe in gravity. Those people who don't believe in gravity start to float up in the air. You don't believe in gravity. That works to some extent. Like in a dream, if you believe something, you better run because that's going to get you in the dream. So it's very relative. Wherever you're at, it's relative. More?
Thank you.
Yeah. So struggle away. But bring a lot of awareness to it so you can see what that is about and the way in which, if there's some warfare going on, see if there's some way you can find whichever side that seems to be the most workable or the most open, and stop sending ammo to the front lines. Just stop fueling it. That's a soft way of working with it. Find out where it's getting its fuel, and just sorry we don't have any ammunition trucks going to that side of the battle. In other words, lose the war. It goes on.
If the fuel or the habit is dependently arisen, then how can we stop fueling?
You actually can't, but you have to take that as a relative practice. You have to take, just like you can't, an ancient teacher once said to someone who was meditating, so what are you trying to do? You're sitting there meditating. I'm trying to attain enlightenment. So he got out a rock and started rubbing a rock on another rock. So he turned around and said, so what are you doing? He said, I'm trying to make a mirror out of this rock. He said, but you can't make a mirror out of that rock. And he said, by this, in the same token, you can't attain enlightenment by meditating. So what was meant there along the lines of what you're saying? What is that teaching?
That if you're grasping an achievement or to join the one, then you're separating yourself more if you're accomplishment driven.
Yeah, you just circle success and failure, and you'll get all kinds of mini credentials.
That was Matsu.
Huh?
Matsu's teacher.
Yeah, was it Matsu? You have a good memory. So the idea with sitting meditation isn't so much about getting somewhere. It's about seeing where you're at. You have to see where you're at, and we're always trying to get away from it. Something about wherever we're at is irritating or bugs us or is not right. Something is just not right. We need to get this or get that or stay away from this. There's this constant strategy. If you meet someone who is exactly where they're at, then from your side, you may project onto them, well, that's boring, or that guy's a dummy. He has no goals. Or not. It's so varied. There's so many. Look at just the people in this room, let alone all the people you've ever met in your life. They're so different. To meet two people that are even close to being alike is very unusual. Even twins, the first thing you see is how different they are.
What are mini credentials?
Anything you're doing to kind of add up to build up some kind of identity that will succeed. It can operate lots of ways, so it's a good question. Anything you're kind of falling back on as a reference point. More?
Yeah, it's not forming words though.
Okay. Good question. JD?
What are you talking about? Would this be under the category right view?
Yes.
It's
Right view. It's the right view is no self, no other. And that's the expanded version of it. I don't know how the Buddha taught it, but probably much more tuned in to people who were 18 years old. We had a lot of monks. Yes.
How do we relate to using the spiritual path as a way of credentialing?
How do we relate to it, or how does that show up? Spiritual materialism, thinking that you're getting something somewhere with your spiritual path, and becoming more and more. But just do it just with awareness. Just bring awareness to it, and don't necessarily judge somebody else's position, what they're doing with their. Look at your own. Be responsible for your own activity or lack thereof, and look at your motivation for anything you do. It's not to stop it. It's not so much to control it or stop it, manipulate it. Even not sending ammo to the front lines. It's just a way of saying, just don't do it. We're always feeling things with the three poisons: passion, aggression, and ignorance. You know, if something happens, we cannot leave it alone, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is. Say you're somebody runs up on the curb in front of your house, and speeds away and leaves a rut in the ground. You know, we can't leave that alone. It can't just be somebody drove up and their tire spun, and we immediately jump into all kinds of stories about it. What were they thinking? It's a good start. What the hell were they thinking? Don't they realize? Don't they? Well, I'll do that to their lawn. I mean, those thoughts go through our head. You all know. I mean, we may not do that, but we just kind of check out and see which one will work. Which one of the thoughts that arise out of just coming out and seeing that hole in your lawn, which thought will work, make you feel better, make you feel you're right, they're wrong, anything, rather than just it just occurred. It's just there's a little tiny story there. And I like to say it this way. You may have a story. Somebody did drive up on your lawn and make some kind of a mistake, whether it's a mistake or intentional or whatever it may be. Somebody did that, but to do anything with that, it's just a waste of energy. You can't do anything with it. It doesn't amount to anything. But we use those kinds of things to, who knows, everyone would have a different version. And I'm not saying you couldn't look out and just see, well, looks like Joe was drunk last night. But you would, whatever the story was, you tell it one time. Anytime you tell a story that is relatively true more than once, this fuels ego. But if you tell it once, you come out and you look and you say, well, that wasn't very nice. I wonder how the hell I managed to do that. And then you're out of there. And you just, depending on the time of the year, you resod it or do whatever. You wouldn't do anything with it. You might find that you might put a whole lot of aggression into that. We all know a situation that's happened similar to this. A lot of thoughts and maybe some resentment. And what were they doing? No, I've got to go and do out this. And then you come out and you see this very same person over there fixing. They realized what they did, and they're not even coming to tell you about it. They're just out there bringing some sod and repairing the problem. And then you feel kind of sheepish because here they are you're really thinking terrible things. I'll hit them with a club. I'll get some pliers and pinch their nose. I'm just thinking of really interesting ways of getting revenge. Go ahead.
What if they keep repeating doing this?
You mean every night they come out? I would go and have a talk with them. Negotiate, find out what the motivation is around it, rather than project onto it. If you can, it might be hard. You might have a lot of resentment, which you may have to deal with. You might not have the skill to go over there. You may feel, I'll wait a few days, or I'll go out there when they come and meet them and say, why do this? What are you upset about? So there might be some way of handling it. It's just, isn't it interesting? So many little simple things like that are just, can be something, the misunderstanding, as soon as something occurs, this is what I'm endeavoring to point out. As soon as something occurs, instead of waiting to see what it actually is, what is that called? Patience, I think it is. Yeah, patience. Instead, we jump right on it. We take the very thing in our life that is not working so well, which is really irritating us, and rather than deal with that one of the ways to ignoring that is to find another problem, something somebody else did, and then we'll come in and we'll tell a story about how bad they are, and then run that back and forth through our mind. Warren.
How do you like not dwell on things that are to come? That you know that are to come, and you're unable to express or have communication with the other party.
Gotcha. So one of the ways that there's a lot of complications there, and of course, I'm very biased here. So I would say, sit down, train your mind, and do a lot of it. Sit for an hour a day, minimum. You have 24 hours in a day. Sitting an hour a day isn't going to turn you into some kind of a holy person, but it may actually give you enough gap in there that your awareness can come in and you can actually see the motivation behind that. It's a fear of the unknown. And so it'd be better to look at the fear rather than look at the thoughts that come out of the fear. In other words, the concepts, ideas, and things that go out and say, well, this will happen. What if that's happened? What if this? How about that? How about this? Maybe this, maybe that, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. It's an endless stream of, it's like plugging into a helpline in your mind. It's just zing, 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 zing. You get so a little bit awareness. Bring some awareness to that, and see if you can see the identity. Who is it that's so concerned? Follow me a little bit.
Yeah.
Ask who is it?
What if you know it's you?
Pardon me?
If you're concerned, like you're the one who's concerned.
I'm concerned.
No, me.
Oh, you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So. I don't know.
So I guess I solved that problem.
How do we see the root motivation?
By seeing it, we can't see it. So you actually go to the most fundamental situation. You go in and you see, just like your question is coming out of that. You keep bringing awareness back to that point where you can't see it, because it's like looking into a dark space. We don't want to look there because I didn't lose my car keys there. I lost them somewhere else. You know that joke. I'm not going to tell it. So, but I'm saying just have the inspiration, the guts, the curiosity to keep looking find the darkest area and get those sixth sense feels working on that in there, actually be in receiving mode. What is it? What does it sound like? What does it taste like? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? It's a way of bringing all of the senses that normally we ignore everything and we just think about it. We forget gravity. How many people here think about gravity all day long? Nobody. And yet, if gravity had to be maintained by your thought, it was your job to maintain gravity, everybody'd be floating in space because we get distracted. Yet, gravity is one of the most powerful things there is. And we so take it for granted because it's always there. You don't have to get out of your bed and turn on the gravity unless you're in space, right? Have you seen those guys doing cartwheels in there? And they say one of the hardest things is having bowel movements and so on in space. How to handle that? There's no gravity. I rest my case. Sorry, I get a poop joke. Unyo.
Christina Rahala from Traverse City asks,
Christina.
What is faith?
Faith? Well, simply put, it's not the absence of fear, but it's not caving into your fears, which doesn't mean covering them up, but it's being in the middle of your fear and having so much faith in what you're about, what you're doing, what this is all about, fundamentally, way down there where it's not to. Where you're not separate from your fear, you're not separate from what's creating the fear, you're not separate from from who's fearful, not separate, not separate, not separate, not two, then what, from the Buddhist point of view, from the spiritual path of transcending the two-ness, going beyond duality, then something, I guess you could call it faith, for lack of a better word. It's not faith in something, it's just fundamental faith. You can't shatter that kind of confidence because it's not based on relative truth. It's not based on the truth of the world, success and failure. It's based on a fundamental trust in yourself that no one can take away, because it's not what? It's not even based on life and death. Even death can't take it away, because there's some kind of insight has arisen where you actually see beyond the grasping of cause and effect. I like it, I don't like it, it's good, it's bad, it's war, it's peace, it's this, this, this. You've actually seen beyond that. And one of the ways you do that is not to. You see it, you begin to see that. You can do that. That's available to any human being. Might even be available to raccoons. I don't know. Although they've got a mask on, so they're probably all in love with themselves. It's Michael.
How do you apply not to someone that's just doing the ruts in their own yard?
Mind your own business. Mind your own business. And I mean, if it's obviously if it's your family or something, then you've got to interact somewhat. But insofar as you can, let them trust people. Let people work out their own karma. Interfering with somebody else's causes and conditions and things without them giving you permission. They give you permission. Even then, be very, very cautious of what they really mean by that, because they might say, like I sometimes have people say to me, "Oh yes, help me. You're such a wonderful teacher. Help me, help me." But I know better. I'm very careful about what I say. Yes.
So how do you deal with your own suffering of just sitting there and watching them?
Yeah, that's called compassion. It's compassion to feel the suffering of someone else. Feeling with, you feel it. It doesn't mean that you're feeling sorry for them. You actually are beginning to feel their suffering. Not easy. This is why the Bodhisattva prayer that we said that Chazan read is about there are all kinds of beings, and we're calling on those beings. It's not a theistic approach. For some reason, it just doesn't function that way. Go ahead.
Is there faith in that prayer then? You talked about energy, putting energy out there.
Maybe a little bit. I think each individual would have to work with that in their own way. Some people need more of that kind of support, but fundamentally, you're not separate from anything you're asking for. Not to. You're also not separate from anything that's really difficult or threatening. You're not separate from that either. Yes.
Is it a way to share that? I mean, there seemed to be, when you do it, when Chazan speaks that, there seems to be something different happening there than just keeping it in yourself.
Yeah, there is. What is it?
Well, shared compassion, I guess.
I don't know. Questions? Karen.
Dovetailing with Michael's question, we've talked about this before. What about if someone is doing something that kind of just has a world harm?
Yeah.
I know that in here we don't correct people. We try to not correct people, and you said that to me before.
Yes.
But how do we help
Yes.
people when they are doing something either deliberately or just out of ignorance that is harming the world?
Okay. What's your question? I understand what you're
How do we
saying.
do it? How do we do it? How
Don't
do
take
we-
your eyes off of it. Don't add to it by interpreting it. And don't go to war. Don't create more war by hitting them over the head with your picket sign. Don't create tension. Find a way by really strong awareness that you can possibly negotiate with that person, so you can communicate with them. Because without communication, you're not going to have any cooperation, and you're certainly not going to have any compassion. Those are the three communists: C, C, and C. You have to have the communication, or you can't get cooperation out of someone that has misunderstood you, or has their misunderstanding, their projections are so strong. So it's slow. There's not much. It took forever for the world to get so screwed up that there's so much war going on. So the downside is the war, but the upside is an incredible intelligence that human beings have. It's just that not looking too good right now. So continue to look at it, continue to have emotions arise about it. And I often say, don't do anything unless you have to. If you have to do it, then you're probably so tuned in to what is there that you can't resist going to the White House with picket signs or banners or joining movements. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but don't do it unless you have to. Don't do it out like just maybe I should do that. Maybe. If you're saying maybe, then you probably shouldn't. So it has to do with the hidden. It's like it says in the SokukoJi, tributary streams flow in the darkness. You can't actually see what you would need to see in order to make what we would call a correct decision. So I say don't make any, and allow just like you being in health, that there's so many things going on in the body that you don't want to interfere too much. You want to kind of find out how this whole system works, like a nurse, and find out how that works and try to support that rather than try to invade and tear it apart. We often cut people open rather than taking other options. So is that helpful, or you have a further question?
No.
So less is better, but if you're really doing that, then when it's time to really move in, you will do it without thinking. When I say you do it without thinking, you won't necessarily have a tight strategy, or you won't be giving yourself a propaganda about it's okay to do this. It's okay. I really need to do this. This is the right thing to do. Am I doing that? If you think, if there's any doubt at all, hold your seat and just keep all your senses open. And then the opportunity, let's say within the karmic complex, this huge matrix of body, speech, and mind in the billions, you will find your own way depending on your own. If you're meant to be doing that, you won't be able to resist it. It's called, like Justin and I were talking about this morning, auspicious coincidence. Things come together and you say, that's a really unusual. Here I am here, and suddenly this comes up I couldn't have made that happen, but yet it's so coincidental. That kind of thing starts to show us the underlying order of everything. And that order includes chaos, orderly chaos.
So
That was the title of a book. Yes.
So with all the conflict in the world,
Yes.
is all fighting bad?
Let me think.
So is there there has to be an end, right? So
Has to be what?
there has to be a good and a bad.
No, I don't think so, Warren. I'm not saying there isn't a good feeling and a bad feeling, or there isn't health and life and support and death and torture. And I'm not saying those aren't there, but they're dependently arisen. They are not separate things that are bad and separate things that are good. It's not two. But if you don't see that, then you kind of get hooked on your own. You get hooked on your own beliefs and your projections. If you believe your thoughts, I'm not saying disbelieve your thoughts, because that's another form of belief. Don't believe your thoughts. Don't disbelieve them. Don't do anything with them. This begins to separate the awareness, which is so incredibly powerful, away from the tool we call intellect or thinking. Powerful tool, but when you try to solve things by thinking, then you're actually limited to just relative pushing and pulling and we're back to the three poisons of passion, aggression, and ignorance again. So awareness is king, unless you're a chick, and then awareness is queen. Yes.
It's time
Time for what?
to say goodbye and hello.
Time to say goodbye.
And hello. Not to.
Okay.
Remember that.
So what should we do now?
We should dedicate the mirror.
Good idea.
In
So
the,
now we're going to stand up.
in the back of your yellow chant books, you'll find the last page is the dedication of mirror. We also have donation boxes in the hallway to support SokukoJi personally and the temple. We would gladly take your money.
Sure would.
May the mirrors penetrate into all places so that we in every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho-san chi shi-hu shi-son mu-sa-mo-ko-sa SokukoJi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.